All right, y'all. I think we're going. Today we're talking WebSockets. Let me show you a demo. Let's get started with that. So I've been silently building this in the mornings, chipping away at it. I don't fully understand how it works, but I did get something to work. So let's see. This is my local app running with the calendar, and you can see already there's some messages in the console, but let's start fresh. Refresh. All right, there we go. So you can't see it in your screen, but I saw on the server that it connected to the client, and in the network tab, I should have some socket messages here. This is just setting up the handshake. So nothing happened right now, but the whole use case for this is that when someone updates their Google Calendar, that the update will be populated in my calendar here without the user having to refresh the page like they've had to before. Because up to this point, the data in the database was updated, but the client didn't update their state or their view or their presentation of the data until they went to a different week and they came back. So instead of actually updating the Google Calendar, I created like a test endpoint where I can do a curl command at this little endpoint here, and I think I'll put it over here. This is what I'm about to run in my terminal. Let's see what happens. Let's get this out of there. Okay, I just did it. You see that? Okay, I hit enter. It loaded, and the data didn't change at all because I didn't send any. But we got some action happening. Anything in the console? No, I removed the console logs. But let's say the person had an event in their Google Calendar that they changed, and then their client would be updated. Long way of saying it's like two-way sync with Google Calendar, my server, my database, and then the user. This will make sense if I think I show the diagram. Let's do it here. There's a lot of steps to it, but I feel like it's actually, in terms of use cases, not that bad. But now I'm just trying to pull up the data flow diagram so you could see what just happened. It wasn't that exciting when I when I showed it live, but I think you'll come to appreciate what's going on here. At least I do. Like, here we go. Yo, for some reason, why are the pull requests not showing up in my GitHub? I have to go to it directly. Okay, if I click the pull request tab, it won't show up, but if I go to the link directly, it will. This is what I'm trying to get at. Sheesh. Okay, here's what's happening. The user makes a change in Google Calendar. That results in Google doing a post request to their own API. My app has subscribed to get notifications from Google's API whenever something happens with their Google Calendar, their user's Google Calendar. So that's what this is doing. Google's coming through on their end of that bargain and telling me, hey, yo, something changed. They don't tell me what changed. They either say something changed, and I'm skipping a step, but at that point, my backend hits their API with a GET request for all the updated data based on the most recent token they've sent. Then the Google API responds with all the new changes. Then this backend parses the changes and decides what needs to be saved and what doesn't. Then this happens. It updates my database. the Compass database. Okay, so at that point, this is like what's been happening before this PR got merged, and then the user would have to refresh the page and get the latest from here. But now that WebSockets are set up, that happens. And since the client and the backend have a connection like we saw, the backend can say, hey, front end, something changed. That is what 4 and 5 are saying. And then the front end's like, oh, okay, I should get the latest data then, huh? It requests the latest data. The backend hits the database, reads it, responds with the latest data. Finally, the front end is updated. It's a lot of steps to do something pretty simple, at least in theory. Like, it shouldn't be this hard to just keep your application up to date with another application. But this was like the simplest way I could ship it. And you'll see just how simple and stupid the way I'm doing it is. But I don't think you can skip any step along this way because of how this API is set up, and because of how WebSockets work. I also try to separate the WebSocket from the state change, and I don't know. I feel like that is a better way to do it, but you could maybe simplify it even further without that. So that was what happens when I do this curl request. I'm going to do it one more time just for fun. So you see that loading message? I'm going to hit again. 1, 2, 3. Wait for it. Loading. Okay. And then on the back end, I'm seeing new requests are being made. I wish I could show you in production. I could show you in production. Let's do that real quick. Come on. Compass. We'll do this one. Okay. Gotta log in. Okay, we're logged in, and then the same user's Google account is going to be here. So this is deployed now. It's not local, and that's important because there can actually be a connection established, because it needs Google's API requires you to be running on HTTPS for this notification thing to work. Like, they're not trying to play around if you're just doing it local. So let's see. What I want to happen is when I do save from Google, I'm hoping that this will do a request, and then this will show up in October 1st. Let's see. Save. Saving. Event saved. Waiting. I feel, ooh, something might be up. Let's see. Debugging. I wonder if the connection wasn't established in the first spot. Man, my computer's slow when I stream too. Let's try it again. Let's see if it even made it there. I'm going to do a hard refresh like you used to have to do. Oh, actually, I bet I know. This is the wrong user. Okay, it didn't work because I made it specific to one user. You'll see when I show you the code. I don't want to keep going too deep on just the demo part. Yes. So it's kind of a cop-out, but I promise it does work. It's just that I'm using the wrong user. We're going to take a step back and talk about WebSockets in general. Then we're going to talk about WebSockets in JavaScript, TypeScript, Node land. Then we're going to dive into my code and how it all comes together and how ugly it is. Then maybe if there's time, we'll try to get the demo actually working. So, WebSockets. WebSockets are a protocol. This is when I kind of start talking on my ass a little bit because I'm not an expert in this. Like I was saying at the beginning, I just got it to work. And so I'm going to talk about how I understand it working, with the promise to you guys that I don't actually know what I'm doing. Okay. All right. This whole feature was very intimidating for me. I hadn't worked with WebSockets before. I knew it was something a lot of people did. It always felt strange. It always felt like it was for really smart people, or that you would need super high performance requirements, or there would just be a lot to it. And I just like put it off for a while. And then I finally was like, yo, we need this feature. It's time to actually do this if I want to use the app like for real. So I figured it out, and that's where I'm coming from. Okay, disclaimer's done. It's a protocol, and it works like this. There's the handshake where they're like, yo, I'm the client. This is how you hit me up. And the server's like, cool, I'll let you know. We're on good terms. And then they can send data back and forth together. I think the pitch is this is like a more lightweight way to continuously send data back and forth compared to HTTP, because WebSockets only include the headers in this first handshake. So it's less data, and it's easier to send it. I think that's right. I think that's the summary of this. So a quick look into some of these examples. I think it's cool to look at just these bare bones framework less examples. So this is on the client. This is the client. It's in a script tag in an HTML document, and they're setting up a connection. And then they have this like event style API where it's like on open, on message, on close, on air. That always just feels, I don't like it, but that's because of when I started learning coding, promises were like a thing, and this kind of fell out of style. So that's part of why I was scared of it. It just feels like different. Anyway, now we're on the server. This is how the server kind of looks. This looks like, is this Python? I think it's Python. Decoding the message from the client, making sure that they're legit, and then printing it. So API, long story short, it's pretty simple. Open it, send messages, respond to message, close it, handle some errors. But even with that said, I didn't want to interact with this directly. Like that sounds silly. So I went to see what kind of libraries are out there. I'm using React and Node. So something JavaScript was what I was looking for. And the overwhelming winner, like, I don't even know if they have much competition right now, but everyone is using Socket.io, and they seem like they shipped a good product, so we went with it. So this is how Socket.io implements the WebSocket protocol for JavaScript people. Okay? They're actually wrapping this a little more as their own protocol on top of it, I think. So I think they're wrapping WebSockets protocol with the Socket.io protocol, so they can do some optimizations, but it's more or less like based on this, what we just saw, I think. So basic example here, you're just importing the server, and then you have that same on connection style. They're calling it emit when you're sending something. Then on the client, same kind of thing. On a certain event called hello, then do this. Here's a quick demo. So this was a client that connected, and then this is the session that they were assigned. Let's reload to see if you can see that. Okay, so they weren't connected, and then they connected right there, and then they get a new session. This session ID is ephemeral, which I think means you just can't rely on it. Like, you can't store this in the database, because even though it's the same client ID-wise, the session ID changes after every time you connect and disconnect to it. Cool. That is the basic gist on this API. Once I decided, okay, I wanted this connection to happen, it seems like everyone's using WebSockets. It seems like everyone's using Socket.io. Then I went to YouTube, and in YouTube, like React React World for Socket.io has some good demos, tutorials, but it's all based on like very minimal stuff. It's like, here's a chat app that is built with Socket.io, and then it's like a bare bones HTML situation like this, unstyled. It's like there's just 3 files they're using, and it feels like, okay, it makes sense when you do it like that, but when we're actually trying to build it into an existing app that might be shipped to production, it felt like a lot. That's why I was intimidated. And spoiler, like it was a lot. This was like, these are all the commits I made, and how many files changed? 51 files changed to get this to work. I did sneak in a couple of things that weren't necessarily WebSockets, which I shouldn't have done, but I did. So maybe like 30 to 40 files had to change to do this like in a clean, testable way. Anyway, this is my path here. Right before the stream, I was trying to pretend like I knew what I talk about, and I found this guy talking about how there might have actually been a better protocol called server sent events, which is mostly for the server to the client. And for my use case, that seems like it might have been a better fit, because this whole feature is just when the user makes a change in their Google Calendar, which the server will know about before the client knows. And so the server is sending it to the client. That's all to say, I don't know if I went with the right thing. I know WebSockets are popular, and it can open up a lot of features in the future now that we have that connection established, and I can just keep following that pattern of creating events and building on top of them. But also pointing out, maybe this would have been better. I had no idea about server sent events until this either. I'm learning. Okay. Let's look at the code. All right. I want to go to the PR where I summarize it. Okay. The summary is of all this. Like, we get a webhook call from Google, talking through the diagram a little bit. And then as a result of all that, we're fetching more events and updating the UI. And we have a little route to help debug that. And this is an opt-in thing, so I did ship it. It's live now, but only for one user, which is me. That's even a hacky like feature flag, is like, if you don't have this ID, do not make the connection to WebSockets, just because I wanted to make sure it worked in production a little bit before just letting it go, because I'm not doing load testing or things like that. I just want to get out there, man. So eventually I will remove this opt-in stuff, but that's how it works for now. Here you go. In the env, I put my ID here on the production server. Okay, this is when I get into talking about all the other stuff that just had to happen because of, I don't know, how complicated or how sloppy my code was before. I had to update the client authentication a little bit, because the issue I was having was the WebSocket was creating a connection as it should, except when it was passing it in, it was using the user ID of null in quotes, quote null or quote undefined. And that's because when the user was signing in, they don't have an ID. There's a loading message, and there's just some time that passes before they actually get a legit ID. But the WebSocket server was connecting before that happened, and it kept connecting with the same ID of null, null, null. And if that happens to 3 users, it's not going to work. So anyway, that's why I had to update the authentication a little bit, so that it would for sure only attempt a connection if there was a real WebSocket user ID that it could map. And that involved refactoring some things. We'll look at that. All right, we also updated some tests, updated how Express is like setting up their modules. I snuck in that date utility. I didn't need to do this. I thought I did, but then I didn't, and then I just kept it in there, and that's bad of me. That's bad of me. Then I had to update how the state's managed in Redux and do some config. All right, let's dig into it, huh? Look at some code. Hold on, timer's gonna go off. There we go. I got this little timer. Freaking love this thing. It's keeping me focused because I was rambling already. All right, we're looking at the code now. Let's see. I'll just go top down and see what jumps out. This is configuring Jest. This is installing the libraries we looked at. This is setting up a mock logger so the tests aren't so noisy. More config, testing stuff. This is refactoring Express, so it's just easier to read and understand, so that I could set up the WebSocket server here in just like one line. So I moved all this stuff inside of how the HTTP server's created, and then after that I passed that server into this function, which sets up the WebSocket server, which depends on an HTTP server. That's all that's happening. Refactoring. All right, defining a custom error. So if the socket ID is invalid, if something happens and my client code doesn't work and the user tries to send null or undefined or nothing, I'll throw this error. That helps with tests. Cores stuff. All right, this is the Express server. All that stuff was just moved into setting up the HTTP server. All right, here's a test file. I'm pretty happy with how I tested this actually. I feel like I covered my bases, but I didn't go too crazy. So this is a minimal test that handles how errors show up and are addressed in this feature. So there's a lot of setup. You can see I have to set up a HTTP server. I need to get the right URI. Then I need to set up the WebSocket server, and then I need them to run. And then after that, I gotta close them all. And just getting this block here, this was tricky because I tried doing it with promises, and then I tried doing it in the wrong order. And then I had to check if the server was running in the first spot. So this is what I'm talking about, where these guys, God bless them, they're showing you the easy, simple version of here's how to set up WebSockets. But if you're launching WebSockets and you want to actually test a little bit of it, this is the kind of BS that you got to deal with that there's no manual for. At least I didn't see that. I want more people to like do demos and tutorials on stuff that actually goes to production, and then show me your production code. That's what I want to see. That's why I'm doing this. This is why I'm showing you guys this, because this is what the content I want. I don't want y'all to think that this is just easy. Even this stupid example of how simple of an implementation it is, if I want it to be tested, so I don't have to remember all this when it breaks, and it took a while just to get this file set up. All right, getting fired up, boy. Getting fired up. Okay, so this is all set up and tear down for one test, which is that if the user's ID is not legit, it doesn't connect. So I'm flipping between null and undefined, and then I'm trying to make a connection. And then that's that connection part here. And then when there's an error, I'm expecting that this custom error I have is thrown. Okay, moving on. Another test. I kind of like going through the test first before the actual runtime code. This is just for the server itself, not errors. This is like happy path stuff. Setup, tear down, same. But now I'm testing the events. This is my custom event, which is my version of saying like, hey, something changed with the user's Google Calendar, like do something. And when that happens, then we should be in socket.io language emitting, or I think that's how WebSocket calls it too. That's sending the event to the client or emitting it. So Actually, this is a little wrong. This part didn't need to be there, but that's okay. Oh, it's because I have it here. All right, I should go back and update. Can I do a comment in an old one? How do you add comments? Is it too late? Because it's already merged. Show file. Okay. What I'm getting at is this payload isn't really necessary. I was initially thinking I will send just the updated event to the client, and then the client will just render that new event or that updated event instead of refetching everything. However, that was a lot more complicated than I thought it would be, because of how the Google API returns the response when you ask for like, hey, what changed? They're not like, hey, here's the 3 things changed and here they are. They're like, hey, something changed. And that's like the extent of their initial payload. And then I have to go like, okay, what changed since last time I checked on this date? And they're like, okay, here's what changed since last time on this date. And then I go through all that stuff, and then I'm like, okay, what's different from here based on what's on the UI? And then I'd have to filter out the one thing that changed, extract all that, and then plop it into here. And then it's just, you see how silly that is? Like maybe when we're optimizing performance, that makes sense, but now we're just trying to get it to work. So I took out the payload stuff, and I'm just having my server say to the Compass user, like, hey, something changed, refetch. So basically I'm doing what Google's API is doing, what I was just complaining about, wherein we're just saying, hey, something changed, and then we're leaving it up to the consumer of that event to be like, yo, what changed? Anyway, that's why this line's popping out at me like this doesn't need to be there. Okay. I added another event for when the client processes their change, which in this case is like they're updating the UI, then they can send that back to the server. Since WebSockets is two-way, right? Bidirectional, one of the benefits to server sent events that we looked at before. That's an easy request from the client to server to be like, hey, good, we got it. You can relax now. I didn't actually implement that because it seemed not necessary, but maybe I should have deleted this too. It is kind of confusing to have code that's not actually in production. So maybe I'll go back and clean that up. All right, we're finally getting to like the actual server stuff. So now, reading about how this actually works at scale, I saw that there's a lot of ways to track all these connections. You could put it in a Redis cluster, which is like a cache that everyone uses. You could persist it in your database, or you could keep it in memory. And I decided let's do memory for now because it's just me using it right now, and maybe some other test users that I'll add shortly. But that's what this is. There's right here connections. It's a map, which is just a variable in the server, map in the user ID to the socket ID. This is one of those things that's like, this feels wrong as someone who shipped to like prod for a lot of users in like a corporate sense for a day job. Like it just feels wrong to actually ship something like this. But when I'm thinking about just iterating quickly and the kind of time I have for this app and how I don't want to make this like even bigger of a PR, like not setting up Redis, not worrying about all that, and just like getting the workflow, the data flow flowing, this felt like the right move. Just do it in memory. I'm happy with this decision. It is silly. It's simple. And it was the right call. But it's just very simple to have all your connections in memory in one file, like on the server. Not even importing it or passing it around. Or it's just like one line. here's how I'm tracking connections, just using a map data structure. Felt like I was excited to actually use a map. Maps are like, that's what you learn about in whatever data structure class you had or article you read. And it's kind of like, okay, well, in JavaScript, it's like everyone just uses an array or array of objects, or Python like a dictionary, whatever. Like you don't actually need a map because a map you can only have one key. But this one, it does make sense because you only want one pair of user IDs to socket IDs. So I was happy with that. At least it uses a different data structure, and it makes sense to do that. All right, let's keep going. This is where I'm notifying the client. So I have their user ID, which means I can get their socket connection thanks to my map. And then I send the event. That's pretty simple. I just say to this person, and then I emit the event changed string. And this is what I meant by we don't actually need the payload. Initially, I had the payload where I say, hey, the event changed, and here's the event. But now it's just, hey, something changed. Figure it out. And here's where I'm setting up the server. So cores was a thing. Definitely a thing that I didn't see coming. But then when it showed up, I'm like, yes. I remember core. It's like whenever I set up a server and actually try to deploy it, there's always a cores thing. So this is that. Okay, interesting thing here is this is the handshake. So if this is middleware now, this is happening on every request from the client to the server through WebSockets. But then I'm just checking if it's the handshake. Because remember, this is the only one where it includes the headers. And in this case, I'm just including one called user ID. That's what I'm checking if it's legit or not. And if it's not, then I'm throwing that custom error. So this took some while to do this because initially I was putting this in the in this block. But then I found out about the API and I found out you could do this check on every request, but then just filter it for the first one really when there's a handshake. And if it's not the first one, then you move on. Okay. Moving on. We're going to skip this handle WebSocket error part. Here's the connection. Now that the client code is passing a legit user ID, we can get it here. And then we can set it on our map, which is just cool. It's called set. I don't know, man. Like, I'm getting fired up about maps again. Setting it in the map. Man, this whole feature just got me fired up again. Because it was like I was saying in the beginning, WebSockets was something I was intimidated by. I didn't know I could do it. It felt like a lot. Like even using a map, like it seems silly that I've been coding for 13 years and I get excited that I actually get to use a map and I get to set something in a map. It just felt good, man. It felt good to do something a little bit different, but in a way that made sense, you know? Like it makes sense to do a map. It makes sense to set it in there. Okay. Then there's a couple other event handlers for disconnecting, and here's what would execute if I implemented this change process thing. This handler, I said we'd skip, was another one of those things that was kind of a pain because Socket.io doesn't implement any error handling. They don't mention that on the front page. So when I was looking into like how do I test things and what do I do there? Like they probably handle it all for you. They don't. They say this somewhere in their thing. Yeah, here we go. Error handling. There's no built-in error handling. You must catch any error that would be thrown in the listener. Like, okay, I guess like they don't want to make presumptions about what you should do with your errors, But then just look at this, like you either got to do a try catch on every event where you're just calling the callback again, or if you want to abstract that, now you have a constant, a variable, which is really a function that has another function inside of it that's called sometimes. But if it's a request, then we're just calling catch, and then you see the point is this is messy, man. But I think it's working. It's working in the test at least. Okay, one more test file, testing that my sending of the client works how it should. I'm mocking it. I'm just making sure it's been called with the right event, and that it throws an error. Okay, cool. All right, here's that handler I was talking about. Handle WebSocket error. The way they showed it in their docs, that's JavaScript too. Like, it was hard to even get the types right. I had to do this a couple times, be a little naughty, set up the ESLint disable line, be a little bad boy, but I had to do it. In my version, it's just like a matter of checking, is it a async or a sync error, and then passing it on. Cool. Let's keep rolling. This is where this is the app code where this is executed when a Google event is processed in my backend, and then that's where I call this. This is the magic, right? We're notifying the client when the event happens. Boom. Okay, more setup. More config stuff. Oh man, I'm just like reading through this. I'm like, geez, this is too much. Here's where I was refactoring the client code to get the auth stuff working right. So it was a matter of like getting the session before rendering the UI, and that's why I'm using layout effect here. Okay, cool. Oh yeah, and I had to set a user context for the user ID. All that. We're gonna breeze through that because I'm like sick of looking at this code. It's a lot of code. And a hook, custom hook to get the user ID. I like that. I actually like that. It's a thin wrapper over the library I'm using for sessions. Happy with that too. I'm just the man, basically. Oh, here's the function I didn't need, but I thought I did. To speak on this a little bit, this is about checking if an event happened in the range that I'm looking at here. So originally when I was going down that rabbit hole of the Google Calendar notifying me and then me only updating the client with the most recent stuff, I was thinking, what's the client looking at? Like, now they're looking at the 29th to the 5th. So if anything happened between those two dates, then I'll notify them. And that's where this function came in that I didn't actually need. Okay, here's the state updates. Let me show you that. I think that's kind of cool, actually. For better or worse, I'm using Redux. It was sexy at the time. Now it's very unsexy. And I was very proud. And now I'm ashamed. It's kind of funny how it's the same thing. And everyone loved it. Now everyone's shitting on it because it's just kind of heavy. It is. It's out of vogue. There's a new way to do it now through routes and the new frameworks. I kind of still like it though. Like, once you set up all the files, this DevTools, this is nice. It's nice to like look back at the stuff, and it's nice to think about your state just in like a totally different place from the rest of your app. because when you do it with the routers, the router loaders, it does feel like it is kind of all muddled into one thing. It doesn't feel like that when you're doing Redux. Let's look at, what do I got going here? I got events, I got settings, sync. So this is the new one I added, and a view for the dates. So this is the new one. It's just a flag. Is fetch needed? This is what changes to true once I do that curl command. And then as a result of that, I have a hook in the React code to see, like, whenever that's true, do a new refetch. You'll see that so quickly soon. Okay, refactoring. This is nice. I like this now. Just wrapping this route. So it's just a single page app now. It's all right here. So I'm just checking, like, once you're here and you can actually, like, see your events, you have to be authenticated, and you have to have an ID. You have to have a session and have to have a user ID. And it's really nice to know that is true, because before I was having to check or do interstitial loading states or just, like, do a timer because I wasn't actually sure if the user was there. This gives me that confidence, and those hooks I saw before, and this here. So now I can pass the user ID here and know that it's not null, it's not undefined, it's not an empty string, it's a real user if we're getting this far. Feels good. Feels good, man. I can sleep at night better. All right, here's almost done. Here's the custom hook that does that refetching if this Redux state flag changes. Woo! That was a lot. That was a lot of code. When I started this, I didn't think it would be 51 files. I didn't think it'd take me, 40 hours, 3 or 4 weeks of just chipping away, like an hour or two in the morning. But hey, man, this works. Let's get a real demo going. I want to show you how magical this is. I want to see again. I'm fired up. So how do I do that? I think I just got to use the right user. Let's see. Let's close this stuff too. All right, Google Calendar, Compass Calendar. Uh-oh, did my app just beat Google Calendar to load? What? Coming for Google. I'm coming for them. Very slowly, but chipping away. Okay, let me see if I'm even right about the connection being legit with this user. Because it should have happened by now. Should have happened. Oh! No. It just re-rendered because I'm changing the screen. Yeah, there's no socket connection. Is this the wrong user again? All right, I'm sorry. This is all trying to be cool and show the demo, and I keep picking the wrong test users. I forget what actual user I used. Okay. What else we got? One sec. I forget to check the stream. I'm sorry about that. I'm pulling it up now. Shout out this guy. This guy did a great presentation. I get fired up. Look at 324K people learn about WebSockets in 6 years. That gets me fired up, man. That gets me fired up. Shout out this guy, man. Love him. Closing stuff. Oh no, am I not even live, bro? I might have been talking to myself this whole time. Oh, is that true? Is that true? OBS, is that true? No, it says I'm streaming. Okay, folks, I'm clearly figuring this stuff out in terms of WebSockets, in terms of YouTube living. I don't even know if you're there. I might have just been re-reviewing my code for nothing. But now that I'm here, I'm talking. I want to also shout out this guy. I'm sure a lot of you know him already. But I saw a podcast of him, and he was just so different, so refreshing, and had such a good message. And that connects to what I'm showing here with WebSockets. Because his message is basically just ship. He's all about just shipping and not being smart, not being sexy, not being loud unnecessarily, like trying to play status or like impress his engineer. Like he's just shipping stuff. So let's look at some things he does. I think this is a little older. Now he does VS Code, but he used to not even have an IDE. He used to just do straight up text file in VS Code or Sublime. Before that, he's using Notepad. Are you serious? I didn't even know this. Oh my god. Yeah, he likes it. He's talking about how great Sublime is, and okay, what else does he got? Yeah, he's like, okay, use Linux. Cool. Go fucking do it. Quit something. Go. Yeah, I love it. I love it. He hosted all on a VPS, just one, for like a lot of, yeah, here we go. Virtual private server. It handles everything. $40 a month. 4 gigs of RAM, 4 CPU. Yeah, this is another thing that I was surprised about. So I have one server for production and one server for staging. I actually have a staging because it makes sense for just the networking stuff that's involved with the two-way sync of my app. It's nice to just make sure it's all working outside of localhost before shipping to prod. But anyway, when I set it up, I was like, I'll just start with 2 gigs, and it'll break in like 2 days once I get 10 users. It's fine. It's amazing how little it needs. All right, here's the good stuff I was thinking about. He writes everything in PHP still. He's embarrassed by it because PHP's not cool anymore. Everyone's in TypeScript. Everyone just looks down at PHP. PHP's old. PHP's WordPress. PHP's Gen X. PHP's boomer. That's not the cool thing you learn now. He just does it in one file too. It's one big ass PHP file. And then he just does straight up CSS and jQuery. jQuery just like PHP. It's not cool anymore. Who cares? He does no framework. No framework. Okay, this is new stuff. I haven't seen his assets. Shut up. Shut up. Okay. So he just dumps a bunch of stuff in here. It's not like well named, or the casing is inconsistent. And then he does Nginx on the web server side. He logs it to a text file. Oh my gosh. No third party, just right to a text file. Wow. This is so cool. He left some things out of this. Yeah, this was 2014. He's still doing this. 10 years later, he's still using this tech stack. It was embarrassing then. It's embarrassing now. Who cares? He's shipping. He's got millions of users. Check out his apps. He's made some really big apps by himself with a simple tech stack. So anyway, I was looking at this stuff and listening to him talk and seeing like, yo, it doesn't have to be this complicated. Like I have a day job being a software engineer, and it does have to be complicated there. Not as much as it is, but it has to be more complicated. But when you're building your own app, and as you're just trying to get it off the ground, I love this idea of just focusing on shipping. So with this WebSocket stuff, I was like, Redis server, load testing, bunch of different clients, bunch of end-to-end tests, passing the whole event payload in there, only fetching what you need to, only rendering what, like, no, just send an empty event, true or false flag, simple, one event, refetch, who cares? Just get it out there. I love it. I love it, man. Shout out Peter. Shout out Shippin'. Hey, I'm fired up again. I'm fired up after making this feature. I'm fired up about shipping it. I'm fired up that I could focus on this for 40 hours while working full time, while also taking care of my health and trying to have a life. Like, I'm excited to ship more stuff, man. I haven't shipped for a little bit. Fired up, boy. Fired up. Hey, if you've been watching, if this is even on the internet, thank you. I'm streaming again next month.